Hi, I'm Molly.
And I'm Jamie, and this is our From the Pasture with Hired Hand podcast. As the owners of Hired Hand website software, we've been developing websites and creating internet marketing strategies for livestock breeders for the past 10 years.
The majority of our customers are involved in the breeding of registered animals, such as Texas longhorns, Highland cattle, horses, and white-tailed deer, where the pedigrees are very important. The From the Pasture with Hired Hand podcast examines many of the differences in raising pedigreed livestock for maximum profit. Join us and learn what we're covering today.
Today I'm here with Ryan Culpepper, who's been involved in the longhorn breed for as long as I can remember. He has been a consultant, he's been a ranch manager, a photographer, kind of all things longhorns. And currently, Ryan, you're with DCT Cattle in Sanger, Texas. Is that right?
That's right. Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Of course. So today you and I are going to talk about considerations that folks should go through when choosing sale consignments. So we're going to go over just a whole variety of information about specifically consignment sales and choosing the consignments for the various sales.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to it.
Well, let's get into it here. So besides the background that I shared, the very brief one, can you just tell us a little bit more kind of about your background and how you became involved in the industry and kind of got to where you are today?
Absolutely. Thank you. I was born into it. My grandparents had a ranch. They actually started the TLBT, which is the youth organization for the TLBAA. That's Bob and Linda Moore, and he's a past president. And my dad managed their ranch from when I was very young. And so we grew up spending weekends, holidays there showing, and that just fueled my passion for cattle and a natural and organic growth within the breed. And we moved on to another ranch, Sand Dollar Ranch, and worked there in high school and off and on afterwards, and got a degree in animal science from Tarleton State University. But always, and I had a few other jobs outside of the breed, but always kept my finger on the pulse of the breed. And it's one of those things I just never could get away from. And growing up doing the show cattle, we were blessed with some great cattle and great opportunities. So we ended up being able to sell a lot of show calves, and that's really where helping other people started. Is they'd come to me looking for a show calf. I'd show them what we had, and then that naturally grew into we had a mindset of, if we want you to have the right animal, even if it's not coming from us. So we would put people in touch with other breeders in maybe closer to where they're at or had the right animal. And that just kind of naturally grew me helping other people. And like you said, doing the consulting and helping, that grew into helping with marketing, and just kind of a pretty natural progression over the years.
I feel like you and I's stories are kind of similar, right? We both got our start back in the show days with our grandparents around.
Absolutely. And I couldn't think of a better way to start or a better way to grow up.
And folks who might not be familiar should definitely look up some of the Bob and Linda Moore bred animals, because their bloodlines are the basis for a lot of the well-conformed, developed animals that we have in the breed today. And just in addition to being just extraordinary people, your whole family, I don't know that they often get enough credit for how much they influence the breed early on.
I agree 100%. Was really fun to really put in perspective is a couple of years ago, Devin, my wife, applied for the Legacy Grant, and she had to write a paper on someone that was influential in the breed in the past. And she'd always heard about my grandparents. She actually did her essay on them, and it really spoke volumes, and it was published in the Trails. So I recommend, it was a couple of years ago, but definitely worth looking at, and some really cool history there.
I forgot about that. We'll see if we can find that and maybe link it in the article notes and stuff. So that's definitely would be a good read.
Absolutely. And it ties right into what we're going to talk about today, because we grew up showing, but he was so involved in sales and the big picture of the breed. Mm-hmm. That's really you couldn't have asked for a better start, thinking about big picture and being thoughtful and all the moves you make as a breeder.
For sure. I completely agree. Well, let's kind of jump into it here. So we're just going to start really basic. A lot of, we have listeners who are very experienced, but listeners who don't even have Longhorns yet, who are, doing their research and thinking about getting in. So let's break it down at its most basic level. So what is a consignment sale, and how does it maybe differ from other types of livestock sales that are out there?
So essentially, our consignment sales in the Texas Longhorn breed are a breeder will consign one or a few animals. That means they will put their animal in a sale, which is an auction. And in the Longhorn breed, we don't have production sales, which would be in the traditional sense, which is one breeder, one operation. They're going to sell their calf crop or sell some heifers or bulls all together at this time. And you go to their ranch, and it's just their animals. That's a production sale. We also have the sale barn, which we utilize. That's different because that's more of a mechanism to cull animals, to send ropers to town. Where our production sales, if there's 60 animals in a sale, you may have 30, 40, 50 consigners. So it's a great place a lot of breeders and Longhorn enthusiasts to come together. There's a certain social aspect, but you bring your animal along with many other breeders and put them in the auction, hoping to get the best price and maybe add some genetics yourself and market your genetics.
So what would spur a breeder to choose to consign an animal to a sale versus sell it private treaty?
That's a great question. And I think this question kind of gets to the heart of the entire topic is why is this animal good for this sale? And there's a multitude of reasons there's a multitude of reasons to consign to a sale versus private. The easiest and most obvious that we all see in the magazines is if you've raised something really spectacular that you want to get your name out there, let people know what you can produce, putting it in a consignment sale, bringing top dollar, letting other people see that you're serious or you have something special. That's a great way to market it. If you do it private treaty, you may not get the same publication or the same publicity because it's just a one-on-one transaction where you take an animal to a sale, you top the sale or do really well. It can really get people interested in what you have going on. Also, it's a great way to market your cattle. If on the other end, it's, if you've got some really nice heifers coming up or you're really proud of your bull or your program, it's a great way to advertise to a captive audience of like-minded individuals. There's also supporting regional sales. Regional sales are the backbone of I think our market and our sales market, and they're the ones, Wisconsin, Oregon, Virginia, out that really cater to the local community, the local market. And that's a great way to support the market, is bring some of your cattle to town, maybe buy something there, and just helping your local industry and local business thrive.
Mm-hmm. So let's kind of have a conversation, almost like you're advising me on how to select animals for an upcoming consignment sale. What are some of the most important factors that I should consider when choosing my animals for consignment?
Absolutely. I think this is extremely important, and something that a little bit of time considering it can go a long way, in that not all sales are the same. Like I mentioned, regional sales, the animals that are successful there are more geared toward what folks locally like to raise. So, if you go to Virginia or Oregon or North or South Dakota, those sales are going to vary a little different. So I always recommend looking through your herd. If you want to consign something, is find what works best for that sale. And the best way to do that, honestly, is talk to the sale host. Mm-hmm. Because they want to be a partner with you on your animals. So like I said, first and foremost it's as much about finding a right fit for your specific animal and your goals as it is for that sale. Because the same animal is not going to do the same price at every sale. So mm-hmm. finding that right fit is so key. And because there's also what I call more nationally oriented sales, stuff like the stockyard sale, legacy sale, horn showcase. Those are not as much regionally driven as something like the Cherry Blossom or the Great Northern Classic or Top Hand. So finding that right fit, and then answering yourself the question of, why am I putting this animal in the sale? If it's, I just need to get rid of her, you're probably not going to have the success that you hope for. So having a good reason to put that animal in that sale really goes a long way to having success and being happy with the outcome.
I think oftentimes the topic of how to choose consignments or consignment sales seems touchy because folks compare sales that maybe shouldn't be compared. I feel like every sale that's out there is unique in its own right and attracts the type of animals it wants to attract in its own right. And so there's nothing wrong if you look at your herd, right? And you think, oh, this animal would be good for a regional sale, but this one would be good for like a higher end national sale, because everyone has those, those differences in their cattle, and everyone has a need for both of those, right?
Absolutely. You're spot on. We've got animals that I've helped with that you would love to see them in a big national sale, but the timing was wrong, or they weren't the right, didn't have the right qualifications necessarily. So they may have been overshadowed, where if they went to a regional sale, just because of the different dynamics, they really stood out and really got eyes on them properly. Mm-hmm. And that could be a number of things, horn measurements, age, breeding, genetics, all of those factor into it and we've all got diverse herds. That's the great thing about the breed is, there's no two of them the same. So finding the right market is pretty important.
Well, let's dig into that a little bit more. So how do factors like pedigree, performance, physical attributes weigh into that decision?
Those are huge. And that's really a great conversation to have with a sale host to see what normally does well and doesn't do well there. But being able to market all of those things you mentioned, pedigree, their performance, their genetics, really, it's really important because certain genetics do better certain places. And certain horn measurements can be successful at certain sales, but not other ones. So all of those play a very big key. And it's so important to know your animal, to know their genetics, know their measurements, any performance, their production history. Knowing all of those will go a long way, and knowing which sale to consign to. But once you get into the sale, being able to properly market it and talk about your animal.
And we're going to talk about marketing a little bit more coming up. But one thing I heard you mention a couple times now is to talk to the sale host. And I think that's so important because a sale host wants their sale to be successful, right? They want every animal they accept to sell for top dollar, and they want to have just a great overall event. So I think, you're spot on with, and I do think a lot of people shy away from that as well. They think, oh, I don't want to bother them, or, oh, they're too busy, or that sort of stuff, which is not the case in my experience at all.
Not at all. That's one thing that there's a lot of diversity in our breed. One thing that is a constant is everybody loves talking longhorns. We love talking about the cattle. So sale hosts, they're people, just like anybody else, that they love talking cattle, and they're usually very outgoing and love talking to new people. And like you said, they want everyone to be successful. So one conversation can really open up a perspective and really help it with having a lot of success. And it gets you engaged in that market even more.
Mm-hmm. So how important do you think it is to consider current market trends when selecting animals for a sale?
I think that is extremely important. And I know we'll talk about this some, but setting realistic expectations is so important to the overall experience of being happy with, at the end of the day, we want to be happy with the experience. Mm-hmm. Getting enough money for our animals is so important, and having a realistic expectation that, just like any other economic situation, the cattle market is up and down. There's the beef market that kind of holds our floor up at certain times. And at certain times, the beef market's down. where we're not getting that insulation, and we'll see some direct correlation in our private treaty and consignment sales. So this year has been a little bit, I like to call it a market correction. We had such a high for 3-4 years that was maybe not realistically sustainable. I think we're now back to bringing, realistically what the cattle are worth. Good cattle still bring good money, but just because you see another animal that brought $50,000 and you have a similar animal doesn't mean you'll get the same, because the market may not be the same, and the sale may not be the same. So being aware of the overall market, and that's another great place to talk to sale hosts, talk to multiple of them if you have questions, can really get a realistic perception in your mind of where our market is today.
Do you think that age of animal should play a role, play an important factor in your decision? Are there sales that are better equipped for heifers, sales that serve older animals better, or should, folks stick with kind of a median age? Have you noticed any trends there?
Right now, the heifer market is pretty hot. Everyone likes to gamble a little bit, or to buy on hope. Those two things. There's a lot of future opportunity with heifers. And a lot of these sales will have a heifer sale. A pretty common formula is a heifer sale Friday night and cow sale Saturday during the day. And I do think some those heifer sales will really do a lot of good, and they have a lot of fun. So like I said, heifers are hot right now. On the top end, the great thing about longhorns is the longevity. So you can bring an older cow 7, 8, 9 years old to a sale and still have a lot of success if they meet all the other right criteria of body condition score, pedigree, and all those other things. We do notice that once they reach 10 years old, that's when the noticeable drop off in return starts happening. You start seeing some extra discounts there. At the same time, as a buyer, that's a great place to really buy some value animals. You can get some pretty exceptional animals at a little bit of a discount just because they do have some age. So that is a consideration on the consigning side, is having that realistic expectation and knowing, okay, I've got an older cow. Is it worth it for me to sell her, or should I try to keep her back and get 2 or 3, 4 more really good calves out of her? And that's a question each person will have to ask themselves. And then the biggest question I get, honestly, as far as the ages, the 2 years old to 5 years old range is so difficult to put a value on those cattle, because they're right in the middle of their growing. They haven't fully matured, but they're out of that young heifer age. They're starting production. Dale Hunt told me that's your biggest opportunity to leave money on the table, is that 2 to 5 years old, because there's still so much opportunity for them to grow. So unless they have something exceptional, color, horn, body condition, whatever is right for your program, typically I've found that saving them until they're get that, a little bit older, a little bit more mature, you see that, okay, they are going to cross these certain measurement thresholds. They're going to have some production on the ground. There's a lot more opportunity to lot more valuable to keep those calves out of them and then get them to that mature size and age. Unless they, like I said, they have something exceptional about them. Mm-hmm. Those are the biggest considerations.
That makes sense. So regardless of their age, then let's talk about presentation of the animal at the sale. And let's start with, I keep saying we're going to get into marketing here, which plays a role. That'll be next. But let's focus more on like what you should do to the actual animal physically. Absolutely. To get them ready for the sale.
Sales are going to have certain health requirements. So that plays into their presentation of the actual animal. Is they need to be up to date on all their health stuff, their vaccines, their deworming. More than that, the next step is it's so important. And Bob Loomis told me this is, and I may misquote him, but he goes, "You'll never lose money feeding cattle." And what he meant by it is, if you bring cattle in really good condition, that's a positive. That's a positive look for you and your program. And the cattle look good. They look healthy. They're shinier. So bringing them in a great body condition score, because you also have to remember, you're taking them out of the pasture. You're bringing them to town. They've rarely been in spots like that before, unless they're an old, futurity or show animal. So it's so unnatural that the opportunity for shrink is very high. So the better body condition you can bring them to town, they just look so much better. They're so much more comfortable. They're so much healthier. They can handle that transition. And then if you want to take it up a notch, you can, if they need it, this is more as much of a health issue as getting their hooves trimmed so they stand up on their feet right. That's not something most cattle need, but if it's a need, get it done, because once it's seen in the pens at the sale, that's going to get a big discount. If you want to take a step forward on presentation, some people like to do it. Some people don't. It's really a personal preference. It's giving haircuts, especially, where y'all are in the north, how shaggy cattle can get. And there's so many spring sales. In Texas, we've started slicking our cattle off, because of the heat, or they're naturally slicked off. Where if you come from the north, they're going to be quite a bit shaggier. So a little bit of, and I'm not talking, body clipping, but cleaning up their neck and their top line, getting rid of a little bit of that excess hair, and even trimming around the head and the horns, really just to bring a very well presented animal to town. It can pay off a lot, because anything you can do to give a positive appearance or look to your cattle only helps you when they walk in there and people start bidding.
So on the nutrition part specifically, how far in advance do you recommend folks do that? So let's say you're talking to a ranch that they do pasture grazing, right? All their cows are out pasture. They're kind of their hobby, animals. They get attention on the weekends. When should they pull those animals up? How soon before the sale to really start focusing on nutrition?
And that's a great question. And there's not a uniform answer to that. Because everybody's pasture is a little different, your quality of grass. But the key, I would say, is, and it's a bigger question, is having your cattle in good body condition year round is way more efficient, cost effective, and healthy than having swings in body condition score. So having a year round nutrition program really pays off in the long run. Speaking specifically for sales, if they're in a solid body condition score, so you're not really needing to add a bunch of weight, but you need them to have that good full look. Biggest thing is having patience with the cattle. It's not a quick thing. So I recommend 60 to 90 days before the sale, having them in a spot where they're going to at least maintain or increase their plan of nutrition. 2 weeks, you're not going to see any difference. Their nutrition and their metabolism, the way they develop, they're too slow on that. Now, if you've got something in good condition, bring it in a week or two in advance, get it used to being in the pen, get it full on some high quality hay, and maybe add a little cubes or grain, whatever makes sense for your program. But if they're in a good body condition score, a week or two and just getting them full can really help settle them in and have them where they're ready to make the trip.
Well, and I would imagine another benefit to just keeping them in good shape year round would be for how early you have to take the photographs to submit them to the sale, because you also want those photographs to show the best animal that you can show.
Absolutely. That it's something that we talk about quite a bit, is animals looking in person like they do in the in the catalog photos. And so, like you said, so much of that is timing. You have to consign. And this is a question that it ties in great is you have to consign so far in advance for a variety of reasons, because it takes so long to get catalogs printed and the marketing done. And you want to let everyone know what's going on. So you're consigning 3-4 months in advance. There's some people that commit a year in advance. So sometimes you are taking pictures pretty far in advance, and having them in good body condition just helps paint an accurate picture of your animal when it comes sale time.
Do you sometimes feel like you're the only one who doesn't have it all figured out? Rural life can be isolating, but it doesn't have to be.
Welcome to Ag's Most Okayest Farm Girls, the podcast for women who are craving connection, laughter, solidarity, camaraderie, and just overall encouragement in your everyday life and dreams.
Each week, your hosts, Annalise, that's me, and Courtney will cover topics such as farm life, mom life, making money online, side hustles, hobbies, sharing on social media, jobs off the farm, and so much more.
Us rural gals need to stick together, so saddle up for some fun, real, and unsolicited advice and stories from our everyday farm lives.
Grab a drink, we're Ag's Most Okayest Farm Girls, and we're here to help. Listen wherever you find podcasts.
From the Pasture by Hired Hand is presented by R3 Hilltop Ranch. Located in Chilton, Texas, R3 Hilltop Ranch has been breeding registered Texas Longhorns since 2006. What began as 3 heifers has grown into our current herd, which you can explore on our website at r3hilltop.com. We're passionate about loud colors, longhorns, and docile temperaments, but it's the easy-keeping, low-maintenance traits of Texas Longhorns that initially attracted us and continue to drive our herd growth. In addition to livestock, we proudly offer certified Longhorn beef products. Visit r3hilltop.com/beef to learn more. Thank you for listening and enjoy exploring our ranch online at r3hilltop.com.
Hey, if you love From the Pasture with Hired Hand, why not go check out my podcast, The Big Iron Podcast with Andrew Shigori, where we dive into the world of registered Texas Longhorns and what it means to be an agriculture entrepreneur in the modern world, with a little southern flair, of course. Find The Big Iron Podcast wherever you get your podcasts.
So you brought up the sale catalog, obviously. Let's dig into some of that, because I feel like these are some of the biggest pain points when you decide what animal you want to put in. That's hard, but then the hard work really starts after that. So let's talk about like writing comments for sale catalogs. And this is a loaded question, so I know you're going to have some good advice, but how important is it? How do you go about it?
I struggle with sale commentary in the catalog because by my nature, personally, if I'm interested in an animal, I'm finding her on her Hired Hand website and digging through her progeny and history and stuff. So I'm going to learn as much as I can about that animal. But where I think the catalog commentary can really shine, it's filling in those gaps of things that are not obvious in the pedigree, in the birth date, looking at a picture. Does she have something special in her performance background? Was she a horn showcase or a futurity champion? Does she have a daughter that was 65 inches at 2 years old, or has a 390-inch daughters? Or that's really where you can put in some information that really helps add confidence to the buyer and fill in those gaps, to spark them to go dig in more. There's been some cattle that the picture didn't just jump off the page for whatever reason. Then I look at the commentary and it mentions her production record or something caught my eye, where then I went and dug in and said, this cow may actually be something I need to look more at. So each aspect of the catalog, the picture and the breeding status and the commentary are a great way to convey anything you can positive about your animal. Don't need to write a book. It doesn't need to be, a big novel or anything. But I think what scares a lot of people also is if they see one sentence, "Hey, she's a nice cow." that may be true, but what else about her? If you only have one sentence to say about her, that means, that gets me questioning, am I missing something here? Are you just trying to get rid of her? So filling in those gaps and really sharing some good information that you're not going to get obviously anywhere else can play a big role in the success of your animal.
I always kind of think about it like free advertising. And I know that it's not truly free because you're paying a consignment fee and that sort of stuff. But when you have everything on the page, you have their pedigree on the page, their date of birth, their breeding, who they've exposed, bred, AI to, whatever, you can use that little comment section for anything besides, no need to repeat that information. If you want, like you said, if you want to talk about the service sire and how great he is, or, the sister that did well, don't just repeat what's right above it. Right. Cause no one wants to read that.
Right. Yeah. It's that other stuff's going to be there. So you're exactly right. Something new and something, like I said, fill in those gaps or bring something exciting, to the viewer, to the reader.
So they get their consignment pick. She's in great shape. They get the hard work done on their sale catalog submission. What's next? What should they be doing to market that animal so she brings the most amount possible at that sale?
That's where I really think these sales need to be viewed as a partnership. The sale hosts, they want their sale to be great, but they have to advertise their sale. Then they've got 60 lots or 90 or 100 lots, 40 or 50 consigners. So that's where I think working, and they're going to do their best, but they've got a lot on their plate. So that's where I think a sale consigner, really it pays dividends to do some marketing. And I'm a fan of every type of marketing, putting an ad in the catalog. So you can put a picture of that service sire, pictures of their offspring or something. Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, any of the social medias, that's just a great way to get out in front of a lot of people. The more people that know about your animal, the more likely two people are going to fall in love with it and bid against each other like crazy to take her home. There's several services or companies, Hired Hand, the TLBA, ITLA, all have email marketing. Not everybody's on social media. Most people still have, an email they look at several times a day. So I'm a fan of doing all of that. Just any way to get your animal in front of the most people possible. There's also print advertising. The ITLA and TLBA both have their magazines, so getting ads in there. At the same time, you have to have a realistic expectation of what your animal is going to bring. So sometimes some of those costs associated with your email advertising and print advertising may not make the most sense, but there's a lot of low cost and free ways to really get your animals out there, specifically social media. And I think that it's a disservice to yourself and the animal if you're not out there cheerleading for your animals.
So we're going to talk about, you brought up some financial considerations, and we'll talk about those in a little bit, but I'll ask you a few more marketing questions first. So if I start promoting my animal 2 days before the sale, is it going to work as well as 2 months before the sale?
Absolutely not. That, you see a lot of people, I think marketing right up to the last minute and those 2 days, that's a great reminder of, oh yeah, I need to go make sure I see that cow. But the earlier you can plant that seed simultaneously without overwhelming people, if you're putting 2 or 3 posts on Facebook every day or Instagram or sending an e-blast twice a week, that can start rubbing people the wrong way because it's just overwhelming and they start turning away from it. But a good balanced plan starting early, as soon as the consignments are sent in and your animal is accepted into a sale, there's no reason not to start putting information out there right then.
Mm-hmm. What about at the sale itself? So you arrive, you unload, what should you have on your pen? What should you be doing in terms of like socialization, or, when you're walking around looking at other animals you might be bidding on? Talk to me about that a little bit.
I'm a big fan of stall signs. Most sales put up something. It'll have the animal's lot number, name, maybe their birth date, maybe their sire and dam. But just like we talked about the commentary in the catalog, someone comes and sees my cow, I want there to be no questions left unanswered when they can walk away, or answer as many questions as possible. So I'm a big fan of a stall sign, put an extended pedigree on there, pictures of the service sire if they're bred, updated horn measurements, updated breeding. Because remember, the sale catalog would be printed a month plus before the sale. That stuff was sent into the catalog a month before that, at least. So your information may be 2 or 3 months old. So you can have up-to-date measurements, breeding, etc., stuff that was done that week right there on your stall sign. And that really adds confidence to any buyers. And that may be the difference between them bidding up to, $3,000 versus $3,500, or if it's she just, between the consignment deadline and now, she crossed 90 inches. So she hit that threshold, that may add significant dollars, because people can see it right there in front of them.
Same with, if they've blood tested, bred, that sort of thing, anything that can add value.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I feel like one topic that like newbies to sales might not know about are the commentators, the pedigree readers, and how you can give those folks updates to make sure that they're read from the block. So I know you yourself have done that, for some sales, and so have had to handle that. Do you have any advice or tips on folks being comfortable talking to those people to give updates, but also giving the right updates, not overwhelming, not going to be able to talk for 10 minutes while, the animal's in there. So what about that?
The biggest keys on that is that's so important. I'm glad you brought this up, because the more information the pedigree reader, the commentator can have up there on the block, the better. But just as important as that right information. When they walk in, the people can see the cattle for themselves. So we don't need to talk about their color, conformation, etc. That much. The key is there anything important in the pedigree I need to make sure I point out? Hey, her mama sold for $100,000, or her daddy was the youngest bull to 90. Something like, if there's something like that, they need to know. But just like we talked about on that stall sign outside, is updated horn measurements, current breeding status up to the date. Those are really the biggest thing to talk about, and try to get them to the sale host, or the commentator. The earlier you can get them to them, the better. Myself, Chase Vasut, and I know when Dale was still doing it, if you could even text that information a couple, 3 days in advance, that's one less thing to worry about the day of, because we're all so busy. These events, for consigners are nerve-wracking, especially new consigners are so worried. So any of that information, the earlier you can get it, the better. But really, like you said, the high points, because we can't tell the whole life story of every animal while we're up there. We just don't have the time, and people lose attention pretty quick.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So with doing the internet bidding for a lot of the consignment sales out there, we actually transitioned. We kind of learned probably some of the same lessons as you when you read pedigrees about waiting to the last minute. Kind of learned that the hard way a few times. And now we have a form folks have to fill out by the Tuesday before the sale. So they can fill it out as many times as they want, update as many things as they want, breeding, measurements, that sort of stuff. But it's got to be in by that Tuesday before the sale, because, folks are looking at the online bidding, choosing their animals the same way that the folks at the sale barn are. And if that information doesn't get updated till an hour before the sale, they're losing out on those sorts of bids too. So I think it all comes back to just preparing, being organized, making sure that it's a priority for you, right?
Absolutely. And Devin will attest to this. I probably say this 7-8 times a week, is that proper preparation prevents poor performance.
There you go.
Anything you can do to prepare and be ready, where I like the idea of just showing up to the sale and having a great time, and all my other stuff's taken care of. I can just talk cows with people because I've sent in my hired hand updates, and that's such a great point. And I see a lot of people will have some great updates they put on Facebook, but they don't put it on hired hand, or they don't put it on a stall sign. And that's where the buyers are looking. That's so important there. And taking care of all those things. Then, like we mentioned, you asked, and I don't think I answered it, but when you get to the sale, just have fun. Talk to people about your cow. Ask about their cow, strike conversations, but be prepared and be ready to answer any question they'll come up with, because everybody's going to ask a different question typically.
Mm-hmm.
Hidden Springs Ranch, located in central North Carolina, is committed to registered Texas Longhorns. From our high-end breeding stock down to our delicious Longhorn beef sticks, check us out at hslonghorns.com or on Instagram at Hidden Springs Ranch. Hidden Springs Ranch, where they're bred to turn heads.
Looking for top-quality Longhorns and a taste of true Texas spirit? Look no further than Cantera Cattle Company. Our passion for Longhorns shines at Old Gringo Ranch, where tradition meets excellence. Visit us online at CanteraCattleCompany.com and follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok for the latest updates and ranch life fun. Ready to experience it yourself? Schedule your visit by emailing canteracattle@gmail.com. Remember, God is great, Longhorns are good, and life is crazy.
Love what you're hearing? Be sure to check out our Pickup Truck Confessions. It's a video series where we hop in the truck or rental car and interview a variety of breeders about what drives their passion for their livestock, how they got started in the breed of their choice, marketing tips, and more. And now, back to the podcast.
Well, let's talk about financial considerations a little bit. So, specifically kind of setting realistic expectations. And I know this is a really hard question I'm putting you on the spot with, but
that is for a sale host, auctioneer, pedigree reader, that is the hardest conversation to have. Number one, you don't want to insult anybody, right? From that perspective. And you want everybody to walk away happy. So that's where I think, like we've talked about, is talking to those sale hosts early on. If you have a sale that averages $3,000, it's not really realistic to take a cow hoping she brings 50,000. That's just, so talking to sale hosts, knowing your cattle and looking at good comps. I do this all the time, but Hired Hand has all the sales y'all have done. They're all cataloged. They're online. You can go look at past sales. I'll run through, if I'm thinking about putting something in, the legacy sale, I'll run back through and I say, man, she didn't have a great measurement, but she was wild colored and 8 years old. So I'll go back and look at little older cattle that are, maybe medium horn and see, well, how'd they do? And I don't look how they did specific price for that animal. I try to look at how did that animal do in comparison to the rest of the sale. Mm-hmm. Oh, she fit right in line. Great. Or, these were a little soft compared to everything else. Because I think the style of the sale or the overall, the atmosphere and how the different animals priced compared to each other relatively stays the same. Where those cycles come in is this cow bringing 30,000 this year or 50,000 or 15,000? It's an overall tide. And the number one hardest thing in all of the breed is taking emotion out of it. We're all attached to our cattle. They're, whether you've got 3 or 300, there's personal attachments to cattle. which tends to beg the question: is she worth more to me to keep, or is she going to be worth enough where I'll not lose sleep over it, where I can take her to town and be happy? And that's a tough question, and every animal's different. But when you can go to a sale and say, I'm confident in my animal, I'm happy with what I've got out of her, whatever she brings, the market's going to tell me, that's the best, in my mind, my opinion, the best attitude to take, because you're not so worried about getting to a specific price. Now, it's also just from a business aspect, these cattle are worth a certain amount. And if you know they can produce cattle that are worth a certain amount, it doesn't make sense to, if I can produce a $5,000 calf every year out of this cow, or she's donor quality, it doesn't make sense to sell it for $5,000, because I can make more money off of her selling offspring or embryos, etc. But I think talking to the sale hosts, talking to other breeders is a great way to get a realistic expectation of what that animal should bring or may bring. And I like having a range or a ballpark. I think this animal's in she's north of 10,000, but probably not quite 20,000, or that 3,000 to 5,000 range. If you go with a range, something like that, that also prevents or helps prevent the opportunity for getting stuck on a specific number. Hey, I need X number of dollars. Because, and it also goes back to every sale's a little different. Looking at historical data for the sales, hey, this sale normally averages 3,000, this one averages 5 or 15, will help set a realistic expectation for that animal you think fits for that event.
Mm-hmm. I really like your advice about the broad range, because I feel like we've all seen it over the years where maybe this is something we need to give the definition of and kind of explain a little bit for, again, folks who might be new. But an animal, the breeder has an expectation of a certain price, and the animal gets within maybe even a couple $100 of that and goes home with the breeder. The reserve wasn't met. Right. Over a couple hundred. Is that good, bad? I mean, I know, again, super touchy, but I guess maybe could you define what a reserve is and just speak a little bit to that?
So a reserve is the minimum bid amount to let the animal sell. Otherwise, you'll PO or pass out the animal, pull out of the sale. So that's, hey, I need to get X number of dollars for the animal. I'm taking her home. And that should be relayed to the sale. I recommend relaying it to the sale at the time of consignment, because that helps so a lot of these sales, we've got so many great sales, so many great sale hosts. They're great event planners that if they're planning on putting 90 animals in a sale, they may get 150 consignments. I would say more often than not, a sale gets more animals submitted than they can accept. And it's tough because now they have to sift through those. And that's just part of it. Just because you consign to a sale doesn't necessarily mean your animal is going to get accepted by that. That's a lot of the terminology now is you're nominating for a sale. So that reserve, I need this many dollars for this animal, can play in the decision making for that sale host. Hey, I've got this cow that was really great. I want her in your sale. I think it's a perfect fit. They say, I think she's a perfect fit also. If you don't have a reserve, great. She sells what she sells for. Everybody's happy. Well, if you have a reserve, if they know that up front, they can increase their marketing. They can do different things to make sure, do their best job to reach that number. But simultaneously, if your reserve is not, if your number's not a number they feel they can get to or that she's worth, they're not trying to hurt feelings, but they're going to let you know. That way you're not disappointed on the day of the sale.
And it could be just that their sale's not the right fit. That maybe
Exactly. And that's 9 times out of 10, that's exactly what it is. It's not the right fit, or, 2 years ago, our market was different. So I think we could have got there this year, not as much. But letting them know earlier than later decreases the opportunity for disappointment and conflict. Because if you say, no, just whatever she brings is fine, or you don't mention it at all, and then the day of the sale is, man, I'm having some, some emotional regret. I'm going to need X number of dollars. And if it's not a realistic number, then both of y'all spent a lot of time and effort and money on something that's not a realistic outcome. And that puts a bad taste in everyone's mouth. So, that's where having that relationship and being open with your sale host, sharing that reserve early on really can be important.
Mm-hmm. How important, or back in your consulting days when you were doing a lot of advising to breeders, were you encouraging them to track their input costs down to the dollar, and then that's kind of where the reserve came from? Or do you think it's more of a market value, where the market's at and the bloodlines and everything?
Absolutely. That's a great question. On higher end cattle, it's more of a market bloodline, because hopefully if it's a higher end cow, they're bringing well over what they cost, to maintain for the year. On lower end cattle, still good cattle, they're just not going to bring, the 5 figures plus. Which is the bulk of the cattle. The bulk of our cattle at sales and throughout the industry are really good cattle that have value, but they need to work for themselves. That's the cows should be. She's a factory. She's supposed to be producing a calf every year. So, so on those lower end cattle, if you know, okay, I know that she's going to make me, if she gives me a bull calf this year, she's going to make me this much. But then simultaneously, it's not so much tracking to the dollar of what they cost you before consignment. It's really after you send in the consignment is where tracking plays an effect on the reserve. My consignment fee is, $300 or $400. It's going to cost me, $50 or $100 to get all my health tests and health papers done. I got hotel rooms, travel costs, advertising, etc. I like to use a round figure. It's going to cost you about $1,000 to put a cow in a sale and get her there. And that's including some marketing, excluding some, like we've discussed, that marketing can, depending on how much you put in it, can affect the cost. But if it's going to cost me $1,000 to get the cow to a sale, and I think she's worth $3,000, she brings $3,000. Well, and then after the commission, I'm really only bringing home in my pocket, $1,500, $1,800, maybe $2,000. So, knowing all of that, and aligning that with your goal for the animal and for the sale, because there are times where, hey, I know I'm thinking of a perfect example is I helped someone put a heifer in a sale that was flashy colored and young, and then it was on one of these down cycles where the longhorn market was not real strong, but the beef market was going up, and they took the animal to a consignment sale, and they didn't get a lot for it. And honestly, they could have got more total dollars in their pocket if they'd just gone straight to the sale barn. Now, financially, okay, we made a mistake. We should have gone to the sale barn, because the sale barn, those prices hadn't started insulating the bottom of the longhorn sale yet. However, looking at it big picture, it wasn't a mistake, because where that animal went to another breeder. They put her on Facebook. They market her. So getting her in somebody else's herd and them being excited for the mating that was coming with it, mm-hmm. We left some money on the table, but overall big picture was worth it. So it's a fine balance of knowing what it costs you to get in the sale, but also aligning that with the goal of with the goals for that animal and for your whole mindset at that sale. And that's where I love the going to a sale without a reserve. Just the market will dictate what that cow's worth.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's all great advice. Thank you. I know that's a hard topic to cover.
It is, and it's one of those that sometimes I feel like there's not a right answer to it, but really it's going to be a personal question that you got to have peace with it, where you can leave happy and not lose sleep over your decision.
For sure. And it's going to be different for everyone.
Absolutely. Every person and every animal.
Yeah. Well, let's talk a little bit about after the sale. So you consigned an animal, you did your marketing, she sold, you're happy with everything. Are you just done? Do you just walk away, or what do you do?
You can. That's the thing about a consignment sale is that, once she's there and goes through the arena, once the auctioneer, hits the gavel, she's somebody else's animal now. And so you can do nothing. Realistically, being grateful and thankful to the buyer goes a long ways, helps you build relationships. Thanking the sales staff, the sale host goes a long way. And I think that's where marketing isn't done until even if it's something simple as, some Facebook posts or social media but we're doing email, if it's the right situation, email advertising or print advertising to say thank you, showing that you're grateful that someone thought enough of your animal to spend their hard-earned dollars on it for their program. A little bit of gratitude goes a long ways.
I think one of my favorite things to see at sales is when a newer breeder makes a great investment, buys a great animal, and that experienced breeder walks over, shakes their hand, introduces himself if they haven't met before, tells them some stories about the animal, or, that whole full circle, I think that's great.
Absolutely. I agree. That's one of my favorite things. And, it can be intimidating for a new breeder that you show up at, just think of, some of the bigger attended sales like Legacy or the Stockyards. You walk in and there's 400 or 500 people in a room, and all these people I've only seen in the magazines have a table up front. I'm not talking to them. Well, then you buy their cow, and then they come over and you realize, well, they're just real normal people that like talking cows just like me. Mm-hmm. Some great relationships are built exactly that way, and it's so important. Our breed's small enough and it's unique enough that we have to have those relationships, and everybody says it is the cattle are good, but the people are great. And that's really what keeps people around for the long haul, is creating friendships and creating this community, and the sales are a great place to do that. And just like you said, talking to people after they buy your animal goes a long ways towards that.
Mm-hmm. Well, what haven't we covered? What haven't I asked you that you feel like is important for folks listening to know?
I like to say that, just consign with confidence. Know that you've done your homework, that you've talked to people, you've got a good grasp of what's going on, and let's consign with confidence, have your stuff together, and go and have fun. If we're not having fun, then what are we doing here? And these sales can be a great opportunity to meet people and have a great time and showcase your program. And that's about it.
I feel like you just came up with the hashtag for this episode, consign with confidence. I like it.
I'm for it.
All right. I'm going to put you on the spot with one more question before we leave here. Any final thoughts on the future of consignment sales and our market as we finish out this year and go into 2025?
Yeah. I've been just thoroughly impressed with the regional sales, and I hope that doesn't come across as a sounding negative by calling them a regional sale, because that's truly what they are, and they're so important. And it's an accurate description of their local, and they're supported by the locals. There's new ones popping up every year, and I think they're the backbone of our industry right now, because they typically have a futurity with them, and the ones that are done well, They're ran by someone locally, and they have just an awesome amount of local support. And I was in Oregon this year talking to Daniel Fay, who ran a sale out there for a lot of years. And Oregon's not the easiest place to get cattle to and from. And he said, this is a great opportunity for us to market our cattle. And now that with Hired Hand, we can get the nation to see them. And what really struck me is he goes, but it's a great way for us to buy cattle better than what we have to add to our own herd. Mm-hmm. So he viewed it as a two-way market of, okay, we're going to market our cattle, but we're also going to bring in other herds, because there's not that many. I'm very fortunate. I live in North Texas. I could probably be to 75 ranches within a 2-hour drive. There's probably 2 ranches within a 2-hour drive of Daniel out there. And it brought me back to the show days. The show days was a great way. We're going to come and compete and show off our cattle. But if you brought something to town that was better than mine, and this is going back to my granddad, if you brought something to town that was better than mine, I was going to come try to buy it from you, because I wanted to win.
Which most people didn't, just for the record. Right. Most people rarely brought anything better than you.
Yeah, well, I was very fortunate. We were, my granddad, and then at Sand Dollar, we were blessed with some great cattle. But we, seeing these regional sales this year, and from March 15th through, I think it was July 15th, I hit every sale. I was at every sale.
That's amazing.
The only sale I wasn't at was, I think, the B and C sale, because it was the same weekend as Cherry Blossom. But seeing the activity at these local sales, it reminded me a lot of the shows when we were growing up. Just the community, everybody, they're there to have a good time and have some business around their cattle. I think they're the backbone. I think there's a lot of future in those sales. And the same way as I think it just only puts more pressure on those bigger national type sales to separate themselves in a good way, is to highlight, what we're all achieving or trying to achieve. I think the market has, and I truly, Lorinda Valentine used this term, and I'm stealing it from her. She called this year a market correction. And, we're not just scraping the bottom of the barrel, but we're not the crazy highs we saw for 3 or 4 years. I think we have a good, stable market right now. It's a lot of grassroots support through those regional sales, and those will help elevate the higher end national sales. So I think we're in a good spot. And in conjunction with the sales, there's so many futurities that at these events you're getting so many people there that I think we're in a really good spot to have a lot of sustained success with prices for the breed for the next several years.
Well, I like your outlook.
Well, thank you. I try to be optimistic. I've been around for a long time, and one thing that I do want to say is, when the market is high, it's fantastic. But just like anything else, is don't get too highs when with the highs, but don't get too lows with the lows. It all cycles, and have a plan that when the prices are low, have a plan to weather that way that when the prices come back up, you can flourish. I think that's a good mindset for some long-term success.
Well, I feel like we could pick your brain about a lot of different topics. Maybe we'll have to have you back on for a few of those.
I'd be happy to. And if anyone knows me, they know I can talk cows all day long and all into the night. So I do appreciate you having me here, and I've thoroughly enjoyed it.
Well, good deal. Thank you for coming on.
Absolutely.